Hello YouTubers and welcome back to Go Figure Customs YouTube channel. Coming to you from a different part in the land down under today. That's kind of what I affectionately call my basement because my whole basement is dedicated to my hobby. I've got my display room out there, which has all my collectible stuff. And then in the room that's behind, it's in front of me, behind you, sort of, is where I do all my customizing, and I put up my I card all my customs, as you've seen on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook page. And then in this room, obviously my comic book collection, which needs a lot of work, my camera gear, and the phone is sitting on an old kitchen table that we had, and on that kitchen table is my light box, which I've talked about in previous videos, and my trimmer that I use to trim my cards. It's a flatbed, like sliding rolling trimmer. It's really cool. And what I'm doing today isn't so much a tutorial, but it's let's see if I can do this and make it really cool. So what I'm doing is making a card for my Jax Teller custom. I'm staring at it right here. So this is my Jax Teller custom. It came out pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with it. Especially the waterslide decals on the back of his jacket. So the backstory is Charlie Hunnam, who played Jax Teller, is coming to the Denver Comic-Con this year, and I made a custom and a card for him to sign, because that's one of my favorite things to do, is get my customs signed by the actors that played them. I had the Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, sign my Ninth Doctor custom last year. I had Clark Gregg sign my Agent Coulson figure a number of years ago. My wife got my Dylan custom signed by Carl Weathers a few years ago while I was overseas. And my first one was my Brock Sampson custom autograph by Patrick Warburton. And he was really cool about that. And actually, Christopher Eccleston was pretty awesome too. Both of them were pretty impressed with my figures. And actually Clark Gregg was too, because he asked me where I got that figure, and I told him that I made it, and he said, oh, that's why I've never seen it before. So I'm getting the card autographed. Sorry, I'm kind of like trying to do three things here at once. So I'm going to get the card autographed. I did all the digital art in Photoshop a couple of days ago. I got it printed today. High-end, not high-end, but like higher level stuff, I always print 2 copies. So by higher level, I mean, I'm planning on showing this to somebody important. I print 2 copies of any commissions that I make, and like anything that's going to go to a convention to get autographed. So anything that like somebody important's going to see, I always make 2 copies in case I fuck up the first one. Then I can, then I don't have to go back to the printer and wait on them to print my cards, because I get them professionally printed. So here is the front, and here is the back. And you're probably like, what is that huge? Probably not like, what is that huge red triangle or rectangle in there on the front of the card? But it's kind of weird to have one on the back of the card, right? Because normally, you know, you have one on the card where the figure lays. So it's not that out of place. But my wife said the decals on the back of the figure came out so beautifully that you've got to figure out a way to show those decals on the carded figure. And it took me, I had to think about that. So what I am going to attempt to do is, I've already trimmed the back of the card. I haven't trimmed the front yet. So here's the second back of the card. So what I am going to do is I'm going to trim out the red rectangles, And then I'm going to sandwich in a blister and a clear piece of plastic in between the two levels of cards. I'm also going to take a backing board and cut out a rectangle on that so everything lines up. I'm not really sure how this is going to work either, because this is a lot of moving pieces for one of my for a custom. If it turns out, it's going to be pretty cool. So I'm going to kind of like do this and then just shoot the video on it. And if this works, then this is a pretty cool tip and trick. If you're making your own cards, that you'll be able to do this too. So I am going to go trim down this, and then I'm going to cut out the rectangles. How I'm going to cut down the rectangles, I've got a metal ruler and an X-Acto knife. So I'm going to very carefully trim out the red rectangles. So I'm going to pause it here and we'll get back and see how that turns out. All right, I'm going to like try and record this and see how this goes. So if you're watching this, it turned out okay and I didn't throw it away when I was doing the editing. One of the other things that I did is I trimmed, so I always round my corners off, and I have a special corner rounder. When I started making these videos, I had a different one, and there was probably a link in that video on making the cards, on assembling the cards, the assembling of the cards video, which was probably the third or fourth video in the series. And it broke. So there was probably a link to Amazon for that particular thing. They don't make them anymore. So I had to get a different corner trimmer. I probably should put a link to this on this video. I probably will forget, but you can get them off of Amazon. This just does one particular shape that's kind of shown there on the little button. The thing to keep in mind if you get one of these is it has a little trap in the bottom, and that fills up pretty quickly. And once that starts filling up, it doesn't trim effectively anymore. So you got to keep that emptied. All right. And I trimmed the backing board down to the size of the card and rounded the edges on that as well. Normally I don't do that. Normally sorry, I have this all set up weird. So normally what I do is I take the front of the card, I spray glue onto it, and just lay it on a comic book backing board, and then trim it doesn't matter how it lays on there, just as long as it's on there, and then I trim the excess off. But since I have to trim a hole in the backing board too, I need to make sure everything is the exact same size before I get started, because what I'm going to do after I trim this out is I'm going to take a pen or a Sharpie, and I'm going to use this as a template, and I'm going to draw a rectangle onto the backing board so I know how big of an area and where that area needs to be for me to trim it out. So this is a fairly complex build. What I'm not quite sure how it's going to work is I use spray glue, and it's like using a bazooka, man. It's like using a shotgun. That's a better approach. That's a better analogy. It's like using a shotgun. It just goes everywhere. Sawed-off shotgun. It goes everywhere. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that just yet, because it'll make a mess of the blister and the clear plastic on the back. So we're going to kind of like troubleshoot this as we go. Won't that be fun? This board is kind of not the right size. That's kind of a pain in the ass. All right. All right. Let's see here. That'll still work. So we'll do a cut right here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to trim that a little bit better after I cut it out, I think. Because I don't want any of the red in there. That one will work pretty good, I think. I've given myself a little bit of a leeway on the size of the rectangle. How I determined what size of the rectangle I needed is I measured the front of the blister and I measured the back of the blister and kind of gauged the size that those would need to be, the holes would need to be based on the size of the blister I'm going to use. And I have the blister and the clear piece of plastic set aside upstairs, and I will get those here in a minute. All right. That actually worked pretty good. Still have a little bit of the red. You can see the red, so I'm going to go back and trim that out real quick here. Still a little bit in there. All right, so there is the front of the card with the hole cut in it. Let's do the back of the card now and see how those line up. And I did kind of like make sure that they were going to line up. So I should probably talk about how I made sure that the holes on the front and the back are in the same place. So what I did in Photoshop, and I probably should have recorded this as I did it in Photoshop to show you, but so I made the front of the card and I put in the size of the rectangle that I wanted. And then when I finished the card, I saved it, compressed it, saved it, and then set it aside. I went back to the front of the card. I uncompressed it so it has all the different layers. And what I did was flipped the canvas 180 degrees horizontally. So the rectangle was now on this side of the card instead of the side that it was on. So just flipped it, and then it was in the correct spot. And then just deleted the layers of art that I put in there, and then put in the art that I wanted, and then arranged the layers in the proper order so that the border was on top, the art was underneath that, and the rectangle was on top of the art. I know that sounds pretty complex, but it's actually really easy. And you really do need Photoshop to make your own cards. And I understand that, well, number one, it's the most pirated program in the world. I don't pirate it. I have a subscription because I do photography on the side. So I use Photoshop and Lightroom all the time. So it's worth the $10 to me to get it legally. But you know, I've been known to borrow movies from Pirate Bay, music and stuff. So, you know, who hasn't? So I'm not condoning that, but I understand that you can get CS2, which is a very old copy of Photoshop, free now on the internet. And for what you need to do in Photoshop, you don't do a whole lot of fancy stuff. And CS2 will have everything in it that you need to make your cards if you don't want to spend the money on Photoshop. All right, let's trim this one down. The first one came out pretty nice, so measure twice, cut once. Isn't that the saying? Ha 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 ha. We're just gonna friggin' eyeball it here and pray that it comes out nicely. That's what we're gonna do. Living life right on the edge. Okay. Whoops. Uh-oh. Yikes, we got a little hiccup there. I'll have to go back and trim that one, that little area there. Not a big deal. I made the rectangle a little smaller than I wanted it to be, just in case I had to take out more. There we go. And I've got just a hair that I need to trim off of there. There we go. All right. So there's the back of the card now. We'll put these two together. It lines up perfectly. There you go. All right. Now for the tricky part. I need to go get a Sharpie to draw on the card. So I'm going to pause it here for a minute. Okay. So I can either set the phone back to view me to talk, or I can set the phone at the right angle so you can see what I'm doing. While I was upstairs getting my Sharpie, I brought down, the rest of the project. So this is the clear piece of plastic that I'm going to use, for the back of the card. What I used for this, a couple of months ago, I bought a Halo 3-pack with the one with the two, oh, they're sitting right here, actually, because I customized them. The two bad guys and then the translucent Master Chief. I made a Bio Viper and a Monstro Viper with those. I actually printed out the cards today too, but they're too big to fit on a comic book backing board, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with those just yet. I think they'll fit on a magazine backing board, but they might be a little white for that even too. So I don't know. That might be a different video. But what I did was I saved that box because I had thought I'd been getting this itch to make another boxed set. So a number of years ago, if you look on my website or on my Facebook page, you can see that I did a 15-figure box set. Actually, I have it right here. Hang on a sec here. So a number of years ago, I did a 15 figure. Is that upside down? Okay. I did a 15-figure like gift box set using like a Chap May plane. And I did all the graphic art in Photoshop. I got it printed out locally. and then glued it to the box. It didn't come out perfectly, but you know, what does your first time trying something, right? It did come out nice though. I'm pretty happy with it. So I was getting an itch to do another box set, so I decided to keep the box that the Halo figures came in, and that's what I used. What I'm using for the back piece is I just cut you can see I can't really, sort of. You can see where my finger is going, is the hole that I cut out from the window box for the from the Halo set. I'm glad I saved that box because otherwise I had no idea what I was going to use for that. So, all right, now what we need to do, move the phone again. Hang on here. Okay, set the back aside. Line these up. And then we use Sharpie. Oops. There. So I used the front of my card as a template to draw the rectangle on the comic book backing board. Now we're going to trim that out because I don't want the backing board coming into, I don't want you to be able to see the edge of the backing board through the front or back of the card. So I'm going to make the hole a little bigger than what I've drawn. I didn't do that on one side, so I'll probably go back and trim that. The backing board is pretty much just for support. As I've said in the video on how to make your own cards, I use 100-pound silk paper, and I have it professionally printed, and I would like to have it done on cardstock, but the 100-pound silk is the best and thickest paper that will run through my the printer that the printer that my printer uses. So it's as thick as I can get it because they don't print cardstock. I don't know anybody locally that does, and the guy that I learned how to do this from essentially does the same thing that I do. He prints it out on a pretty thick paper and uses a comic book backing board as well for support. All right, let's see how all three of these line up. Not bad. Not bad at all. Yeah, that's pretty good, actually. Nice. All right, now let's see if yeah, that's what I was afraid of. The front hole is not big enough. Or is it? No, it's not. This is the one the blister was going to use, I'm pretty sure. So the front hole needs to be bigger, unfortunately. Unfortunately, it has that kind of weird notch at the bottom, and I am not even about to try to mimic that. A little bit more off, and that's why I made the rectangle what I thought might be a little too small, rather than have it too big, because you can always take away, but you can't put it back. So I'm not too surprised that the rectangle on the front is too small. I was kind of expecting that. Yeah, it's pretty close. And I just also kind of want to reiterate, there's nothing like super complex about this that you can't be doing this yourself if you want to. Unfortunately, it kind of widens at the base. All right, so unfortunately, I got a phone call while I was recording that, so I don't know how much of my video I lost, because it was a fucking spam call. Anyway, getting closer, getting closer. Need to take just a little bit more off. And we will have to definitely trim down the back comic book backing board. Otherwise, you will be able to see the board through this because the hole is definitely going to be way smaller than this. That's not a problem either. What we want it to do is the card to lay over the blister, just like that. We want it to lay flat over the blister. All right, so what we're going to need to do now is trim out the excess of the comic book backing board. So let's get that lined up perfectly. And then make the marks using the front of the card as a template again. And we'll trim the card down, or the backing board down. And we're gonna go outside of the lines that I've drawn to make the hole big enough so that the board is not visible through the front of the card. And I'm not too worried about the size of the hole in the backing board because, again, it's just there for support. So we can trim quite a bit of that away. And the plastic in the blister and the plastic in the back will make up for the support from the lack of the card. Okay, that looks pretty good. We'll sit there like that. That will sit like that. I don't know how I'm going to glue this just yet without making a mess of everything. I think what I might do is super glue the blister to the front of the card to make that all one piece. And then spray glue center card. So now the problem becomes that the hole in the back is too small. I made the piece of plastic that's going to go over in the back bigger than it needs to be too, so I can trim that down too. I may have to cut another piece because the holes are getting bigger than anticipated. So I'm using the center board, or the center card, which is the comic book backing board, to make another template, so I know how much area I need to take out. So took out the excess. Let's see how that all lines up. That's actually not too bad. Not too bad. There we go. All right. Now I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna glue this piece of plastic to the inside of the back of the card. had my glue here because I was doing my, normally I have a clear spot on my workbench where I do my cards, but right now I bought a beater armor bot from a buddy of mine and I painted it, but I don't want to sit down and take the time to mask it to do the rest of the painting. So it's taking up all of my space where I normally assemble my cards. So I'm assembling my cards here, and this is actually not such a bad idea because I can sit down and do it, which I cannot in my other spot. All right. I think that actually fucking worked. I'm gonna have to hit it with some super glue accelerator though. So my super glue accelerator now comes in an aerosol instead of a pump, and I've been pretty miffed about that up until now, but now I the aerosol is exactly what I needed for this. Although I got super glue on my workbench, so I gotta be sure not to put my card in that while I'm working on it. So there is the back of the card, probably aerosol. Boy, I don't know how I'm gonna do that yet. It's got to be the spray glue. I mean, that's what I use for this stuff, but it's gonna be a pain in the ass, I think. Should be pretty fucking cool when it gets done, though. Is lay a bead, super glue. On the outer part of the flange, which seems counterintuitive. And then we're going to lay the card down on it. And use the X-Acto knife to push the card onto the super glue and not get fingers in super glue. And I'm going to hit that with super glue accelerator. Oh, please tell me I didn't just super glue it to the goddamn... Yeah, just about super glued it to the workbench. Wet glue with the accelerator so it doesn't stay wet. All right. Now, Jax, where are you at, buddy? Goddamn, not good on my fingers. All right. Oh, it ain't perfect, but it's pretty damn close. And there you go. All right, I'm gonna stop the video here. I'm gonna go aerosol glue this all together, and then we'll do one last part of the video where you can get to see it all. Okay, so I went upstairs and I aerosol glued the 3 cards together, and this is what we came up with. Not bad. It's a little rough around the edge in the back, but let's be honest, this is going to be on display. I'm going to show it to, Charlie Hunnam once to say, hey, look, check out the decals on the back. Your eye's going to be drawn to the waterslide decals. You might notice that I'll say, it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. So I aerosol sprayed this part, and then had to use super glue to close the edge of the front card to the backing board and the back card to the backing board as well. And then I put the JPEG punch hole in there to make it look more toy-like. And there you go. Now, window back card. I'm pretty happy with that. Like I said, it's not perfect, but you know, for the first try, I'm pretty happy with that. I'll take that. It's not perfect, but it'll do. So yeah, come this summer, we'll get Charlie Hunnam to autograph this, and yeah, there you go. So once again, it's all stuff that you can do. I did the front card in Photoshop, put the rectangle in there that I wanted to cut out, saved the card, and then unflattened the layers, and then rotated it 180 degrees horizontally, took the front art out, dropped the back art in, and compressed that and saved it. And that's how I knew where my rectangle needed to be front and back. Measured the blister that I was going to use, so I knew about what size rectangle I needed. I made it a little smaller than I needed to, because I figured I'd probably have to, it would be easier to trim it down than it would be to have too much cut away. Used a piece of plastic from a Halo figure box, and then just a regular blister. I get my blisters from empire.com. I highly recommend those. That guy that comes from Texas, he does a pretty quick turnaround, and they're $1 a piece, usually, I think. But there you go. It's all stuff that you can do. And yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not perfect, but it's my first time doing this, and what's perfect the first time? Nothing's ever perfect the first time. By the way, the water slide decals, the templates for those are on the G Drive for Go Figure Customs. There is a video on here that will show you how to access the G Drive. So if you want to make your own, they're already sized perfectly. All you got to do is print them out. And I did print those on opaque paper instead of the translucent, just so you know. But there you go. Man. Comments, questions, as always, please do that fun social media stuff. Like, share, subscribe, comment below. I do try and get back to everybody. And thanks for watching.